Besides Morgan & Morgan, nobody's brand is worth nearly what they think it's worth. If a venture capitalist was to come by my law firm today, they're going to ask me, how many cases do you have open and what's the average value? And they're going to take that number and they're going to multiply it by that and then maybe give you a 3 times X on it or something.
Welcome to the Tip the Scales podcast, where we discuss running and growing your law firm. I'm your host, Maria Monroy, president and co-founder of LawRank. Today, I am joined by Larry Nussbaum, who has canceled on me a million times, so I can't believe I actually got to record with him today. We talked about partnering with Alex Shunnarah. We talked a lot about ego, why he stopped posting on social media, how advertising is a necessary evil. I hope you guys enjoy the episode.
She's my favorite in the industry.
I'm your favorite in the industry? Let's start there. Is this recording? Oh, great. So let's start there. I'm your favorite.
She's my best friend. She just doesn't admit it.
I don't know. Okay.
She ditched me for Jen Gore.
We don't talk that often, Larry. You used to call me to check in.
You and Jen Gore?
No,
How often do you and Jen Gore talk? Daily? Is it a daily thing now?
Not daily.
I saw you got the kids together.
It's not a daily thing, but it's pretty often.
How's the leg cross? Is the leg cross acceptable?
It's acceptable. You need to move the mic up, though.
No, I was crossing my leg the other day, and some guy across from me was like, how are you sitting? And I'm like, I got my legs crossed.
My grandpa used to cross his legs.
Is that not okay? I can't do the Indian sit anymore. I'm not flexible enough.
How come you don't call me anymore?
Oh, that's a loaded question. No, that's nothing personal. That's I just haven't put as much time into this industry as I'd like right now.
So one thing
personal life over business life every day. Every day. All you young lawyers, fuck law. Take care of your personal life.
Interesting. I never thought you would say that.
Oh my God, it's all about personal life. What else? What else is there? So you can say that you have the biggest law firm in America?
Do you want the biggest law firm? No. Okay, we'll come back to this. But one thing I wanted to say is that one thing that I really appreciated about you is that you would actually call me just to check in. Just hey, how are you? How are the kids? How's the family? Super quick call, but you would call and check in.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'll do better at that.
Well, no, I need to return the...
I will do better at that. I'm a big believer, so I think everybody's got their strengths, and I think whatever industry you're in or whatever you're doing in life, it's all about the people you're around. So when I go to a conference, for me, it's about the people I meet and the people I get to know and the people I get to continue the relationship with. It's not about the actual content that I'm learning or whatever the conference is about. So the people I do like, and I don't like most people, I don't mind missing that. So the people I do like, I like to stay in touch with.
Yeah.
And you fall into that category, although you ditched me for Jen Gore.
I did.
Let's play a contest. How many times we can mention the name Jen Gore in one
That's easy, though.
In one podcast.
What are you drinking?
So this is apple juice.
That's very healthy.
It's actually Red Bull vodka.
Oh.
No ice.
Yeah, so
Pellegrino. You were here yesterday. I just got here late last night. This is my first drink.
We walked in to my suite, and the first thing that Larry did was raid my mini fridge.
I did raid the mini fridge.
Yeah. Most people don't feel comfortable doing that. I love that we're there.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with it too. I always tell people, what do you want? Nobody ever takes me up on anything.
I've been looking for a drink for about 2 hours, and there's no bars open, so the mini bar works.
I told you,
although ice would have been nice for all these fancy sweets. They didn't give me a fancy suite.
They didn't?
Oh.
Well, they didn't give this to me.
I paid full price. Oh, you had to pay for your own room?
I paid for this. Why wouldn't I pay for this?
Some speakers told me their room
I'm not a speaker.
Oh, you're not a speaker. Gotcha.
I'm not a speaker.
Gotcha. You're not a speaker.
Yeah.
All right. So
they did reserve this for me and to make sure I'd have one. And I didn't even ask because they know that I record. And
so I came so last minute that I'm assuming they had a room block here?
They did.
I didn't even use the room block. I just kind of went.
I was
looking at the different rooms, and I'm like, the Marriott's not going to love this, but I think I was expecting better from this resort. How about that? So I saw a couple people post their rooms when they got here and do whatever that normal shit is they do on Instagram, and I'm like, I opened my door to my room, and I'm like,
But do you have a suite?
I don't have a suite, but my room is exactly like yours, minus the extra sitting area. So it's the same decor, same closet, same wallpaper, same TV, same background, same everything.
I thought for a conference this was great.
It's very, 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 very basic.
I disagree.
So if you were to take your family on a vacation in Scottsdale, are you staying here?
No.
Oh, they do have a nice water slide for the kids.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm pretty picky.
Oh my God, I don't even want to know what those hotel rooms cost you.
This was, no, you actually don't. So you guys, by you guys, I mean, you're part of the Shunnarah. What is it? Nussbaum Shunnarah?
No, so right now we're Altman, Nussbaum, Shunnarah, and we're not part of anything. We're just a Boston, Mass firm. We're called Altman, Nussbaum, Shunnarah. Alexander Shunnarah is a partner in the firm. I'm a partner in the firm. And then there's the Altman brothers who are partners in the firm.
Okay. So how did that come about? Because at first it was Nussbaum Shunnarah, then the brothers came in.
Yep. And then at first I was Nussbaum Law Group. So to go way back, I was Nussbaum Law Group. I never spent any money on marketing. My whole business grew.
You're cheap.
From the ground game.
You're cheap.
No, I just didn't need it. I didn't even know there was marketing that existed. Boston's still way behind in terms of, if you look at the demographics and the different states in terms of marketing money spent, like for a big state and city, Boston, Mass is way behind what other big states and cities are spending for advertising in the legal community.
Why do you think that is?
Very old school and liberal. So like back, it still happens now, but like you were the black sheep if you had a billboard up. Nobody wants to hire a billboard lawyer. Nobody wants to hire a TV lawyer. We want a real local homegrown lawyer. And you still see that. I still see that everywhere. I still think people want their local lawyer. People can now see through all the bullshit of marketing, but it works.
What about the younger generations though?
The younger generations, I think it's interesting because I grew up as a rainmaker, meaning I could get my own business off the street. Now the business has changed to it's just a marketing and a money game. Although I see my numbers and I know other people's numbers, my best cases don't come from TV and marketing. My best cases come from friends, family, prior clients. There has to be a personal connection. If in my opinion, if you have a family member that gets horrifically injured or killed in an accident, and you just go on Google and find a lawyer, that's terrible.
It happens.
It does happen. I'm just saying that is awful.
But I think it has
you wouldn't
to
even
do...
go. You wouldn't even go to an Italian restaurant without getting a recommendation to go to.
That's not true. B, I think it has to do with like who you know, right? So yes, if you're affluent and you have friends or family that are lawyers, you're gonna get a recommendation. But if you don't know anyone that went to law school that is a lawyer, or like what else are you going to do? There's no other.
So they get recommendations from people who have previously used lawyers, people who have actually experienced that lawyer. Because what happens now,
that can happen.
And Maria has asked me not to name names, but I'm thinking of somebody specifically right now when I say this.
You can name names.
No, I'm not going to name. I'm not going to name this. I'm not going to name this name because this is real big shit talking. But what happens now is that people can go. Let's just talk social media. Forget TV and that. You can go on social media. You can run a Facebook ad. You can run an Instagram ad. You can promise the whole world to potential clients, and you're going to win. Okay? Just like your kid wants the new bag of Skittles, or I'm a sucker for new candy. So I go into Walgreens and there's it says new on the bag of Doritos. I'm trying the new flavor. Me personally.
You're just a big kid.
I am a big kid, but I'm a sucker, and that's marketing. So all these lawyers go on there, they promise the world to the client, and they get the client. And then what happens? That lawyer has never practiced law in their life. They don't actually even have a firm. They refer out every single case to multiple different firms. Those firms aren't even necessarily good firms. Those are firms that are just paying the most money as a referral fee back to that lawyer. So the client gets completely lost in this whole process. Nobody cares about the client anymore. They just care about the client acquisition. I think the business has been ruined by marketing. That's my opinion.
But you're a marketer.
We do a little bit.
You've
marketing.
Done billboards. You've wrapped cars before. For some unknown reason to me, you won't do SEO.
Television. Television is our biggest spend.
Okay, so
radio is. Television's our biggest spend. Google's number 2. Radio's number 3. Believe it or not, I'll take radio over television.
I actually do believe it.
I like radio over television.
I do believe it. And where I'm a little bit confused is you're literally shit-talking the same thing that you do.
Correct. Because I do it because I have to compete.
So
if I didn't do it, I wouldn't be able to compete with all the other big players.
It's a necessary evil, is what you're saying.
It's a necessary evil. If you don't do it, your firm will not compete with the big players out there. But nobody wants to admit what I'm going to say, which is they can all go out there and hold the fucking press conference that says all I care about my clients. It's just about money. Big money grab by all these lawyers.
let's go back. You were on your own. You weren't doing any marketing. And then how did you meet Alex?
I was on my own. I didn't do any marketing. And so the first money I ever put into marketing was Mike Mogul and Crisp.
Okay.
When I joined Crisp, there was no Crisp. They did a few videos.
Are you going to Crisp this year?
I don't think so. I don't think I'm invited.
Why? You can. I have a table. You want to come?
I'm in.
Are you really?
If you invite me, I'm coming.
Okay.
No, I like Michael Mogul. I was speaking about Michael Mogul today. He'll actually be proud to hear this. And Michael and I have butt heads on multiple different issues. Nothing serious, but I'm vocal.
No. You're vocal?
He is. I would hire him to run my law firm.
Oh, he's fucking smart.
I think Mike Mogul could run any law firm better than any law firm that's running itself right now. And that's a big compliment to Mike. So he's a master salesman. He's a master businessman. He's very, very talented. And so I joined the first ever Crisp X group. There was 25 law firms. I was the poorest person in that room by far. I begged and squealed. I didn't qualify. You had to be doing enough money in revenue to make this elite group.
So what enticed you about it? Why did you want to join?
FOMO, fear of missing out.
Okay.
I said, that's the group you have to be in. This is my first conference I've ever been to is Crisp, their first conference. I bought all into it. And so then.
You got sold?
Yeah, I got sold. And at the very end of the conference, it says, basically people were begging to get in.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I squeezed my way in. I didn't qualify for any of it. And in that group was Shunnarah. So at a certain point, I had been approached by another lawyer who wanted to partner with me. And basically, I took that information, I shared it with my mastermind group, which was Crisp at that time. And Shunnarah basically gave me that same offer. And I had a closer relationship with Alex at that time because we were in this mastermind. So I knew him. So I'm like, why would I do this with a stranger when I can do it with Alex? But essentially, I got to a point where I had grown my firm from one person. We had about 12 staff members. I was doing about 20 cases a week, which is about 80 a month. No referral fees. Actually, that's not true. Shout out Morgan & Morgan. I did get Morgan & Morgan referral fees. They were a big part of me growing. But besides Morgan & Morgan, every case came from my own connections. And at a certain point, no matter what I did every week, I could never get more than 20 cases. I could work, I could not work. Every week it was 20 cases, 20 cases, 20 cases,
That's
20
still
cases.
Really good,
which is unbelievable. Some firms do that with marketing. But I couldn't get past it. And at that time, you had asked a question earlier, do I want to be the biggest firm in America? My answer is no. 10 years ago, my answer was yes. To me, I wanted to be the biggest, most famous law firm in America.
And I want to come back to what changed. But before we get into more of like the personal stuff, so you partner up with Alex, and what was that like? I know at some point the brothers came in.
Yep.
But can you walk us through all that? Because I think people are curious, right? There's a lot of younger lawyers that are being approached with similar scenarios, right? In different ways.
And we do this right now. We're looking to buy. It's not even the small lawyers. We're looking to buy the lawyers that are about to retire, the old school lawyers that have, a good reputation in Boston. They never grew to be a big firm. They got 5 employees. They got 400 cases. They got a big following.
And what's the logic from that? Because you still want to get the cases that they would have been referred, or you just want their active cases? Because that doesn't make sense.
It's really just the active cases that are taking over. Ego.
Yes.
Ego. So ego drives this business. Everybody thinks that their firm's worth a lot more, okay? So there's some firms that do better than others, but there's not a person that doesn't believe their firm is worth more than their firm's worth. Just like they say, everybody's emotionally attached to their house. So like when your realtor tells you your house is only worth $1 million, but you're like, well, it's my special room that I built. It's worth $2 million because you're emotionally attached to it. That shit don't matter to anybody else. So going off subject for a second. So like, what's a law firm worth? The reality is, my understanding today, as we sit here, a law firm is worth your inventory, okay? With very few exceptions. There's a few brands out there, I think less than 5. I actually think maybe only 1.
Which one?
Morgan & Morgan.
I knew you were going to say that.
So besides Morgan...
And they've done a good job at
Besides Morgan & Morgan, and there's going to be a bunch of haters out there when they hear this, besides Morgan & Morgan, nobody's brand is worth nearly what they think it's worth in the law business today. Your firm is worth your current caseloads. We had a guy in Boston, he wanted to sell his brand for $40 million. because his argument was my phone's going to keep ringing and ringing and ringing. Well, no, the minute
But was he the brand?
he is the brand. There's always a brand.
How is
correct? You said it correctly. The reality is when that person leaves and they stop spending $300,000 a month on marketing to keep pushing that brand, there is no value. If a venture capitalist was to come by my law firm today, they're going to ask me, how many cases do you have open and what's the average value? And they're going to take that number and they're going to multiply it by that and then maybe give you a 3 times X on it or something.
I agree.
There's no value to your firm besides your open cases. So yeah, we would buy out other cases.
Because the way that I see it is, if you're a lawyer and you have 600 active cases, right, and you want to retire, aren't you better off just finishing out those 600 active cases than selling them to you? It's going to be more money. Is it just a time thing? It's
a time thing because the cases never end. And then if you're staying open to finish out those 600, you're going to keep getting more cases. And
you could just refer those out. The new ones.
So a lot of these purchases really become referral programs, right? So like we buy out so-and-so. All they're really doing is referring us all their business. They're not really open anymore.
Got it.
That's why I said there's a big facade here in this industry where it's like nothing really is as it appears. It's just a case, and people listen. I know a case that gets signed today in Boston. There's 3 different lawyers that have all had their hands on it, and this firm's getting 40%. This firm's getting a 10% middleman fee. This firm's getting 5%, and then we're getting 45% to handle it. Everybody's chopping up the money.
And but what would the solution be? I think the only solution would be that law firms cannot advertise. That would be the only solution to this. You can no longer advertise, not on social, no billboards, and force people to have to do word of mouth. I think SEO would do amazing because then it'd be the only avenue.
Correct.
I would love that. Can we please do that?
But even something as simple as like, and I'm a sucker for all this stuff, right? So it's not just the legal industry. Like, so if I order something off Uber Eats, I want a place that has over 1,000 reviews. Mm-hmm. So if it has over,
they're fake half the time.
Correct. So same thing with law firms. These law firms are buying reviews or they're getting fake reviews. So
I think that's about
what's real versus not real. That's my problem with the advertising. So the best advertiser, think about this concept. The best advertiser wins, not the best law firm.
I agree. I mean, that's a fact.
If we're trying to protect the customer because we're a legal industry rather than, right, nobody's protecting somebody from buying Coca-Cola or Pepsi. But if we're trying to protect someone who needs to buy or hire a law firm, we're not protecting them. The client is a sucker right now in this industry for who's marketing better to them. Who can win that client's vote? No different than the election going on in the U.S. right now. I'm not going to get political, but it's a popularity vote. It's not based on issues anymore.
Okay, but yes, I agree. I don't know what the solution is, and I get that. For a lot of firms see it as a necessary evil. I think a lot of trial firms say it's beneath me and I'm not going to do that. My argument is, well, if you want to help more clients, I find it kind of odd that the whole concept is like upside down.
It is.
Because the trial firms that would do good for the client don't want to advertise because it makes them look like they're not legit.
Correct. So think about that. You just said it. All these people don't want to, you asked why Boston's behind. All these old school Boston lawyers, advertising to them makes you no good. I saw somebody's ad the other day, which was like something along the lines of hire me, don't hire one of the billboard firms, right? You see those all over the country.
Yeah.
There's people that take that method. Don't hire the billboard firm. Don't hire the billboard firm. But now they're doing the same thing we're doing. They're now advertising and just trying to say, well, here's my niche. I'm not the billboard person. I'm just the person that's paying someone to chase you all over social media to try to get your case. We're all trying to do the same thing, which is land the next case.
Yep.
But to whose cost? So for me, I truthfully can say this, and somebody can call bullshit on me. I'd rather make less money and have a happy client than make more money.
Do you guys try cases in-house?
We do, not as many as I'd like. But yeah, I don't refer cases out anymore.
So you partner up with Alex. What was that like? And would you do it again?
Pros and cons to any partnership.
Okay.
So I think anybody that has built their own business, there's an emotional attachment to it. So like for me, Nussbaum Law Group is my baby. Just like for Alex Shunnarah Injury Lawyers is his baby, and Morgan & Morgan has his baby. Everybody's got their own baby. So when you partner, it's like taking on like a step parent. And I'm not saying step parents can't be great, but it's not necessarily the same as it being truthfully your own. And I know that's going to not sound too good, but it's the truth. So for me, I went into the partnership. I'm very strategic. I try not to come off that smart, but I'm very strategic and I make very educated decisions. So when I decided to partner with Alex, I said to myself, if I fight him on every decision we have to make, then what was the point of partnering, right? So I want to use LawRank, which I did.
Alex.
And Alex didn't want to use LawRank.
Yes.
Right? That's just a fact. Well, I could fight him out on that battle. We're equal partners. We could battle that one out.
Are you guys 50-50?
Yeah, we're equal partners.
What happened when the brothers came in?
That's a more complicated question. But I could fight Alex on every issue, and we could just have a war on every issue. Do we want to hire this lawyer? Let's have a fight. Do we want to hire Maria? Let's have a fight. Well, what's the point of us partnering if we're going to fight over everything? So initially, I went in with a very open mind that said, Alex has built this enterprise. I'm choosing to partner with Alex for a reason, because I believe that partnering with Alex would get me where I wanted to go at a much faster rate than if I did it on my own. So that's why I partner with someone. So if somebody says, why did you take on a partner? I had a goal I wanted to reach. My goal was to be the biggest and best firm in America. I'm using the word best lightly. It was really to be the biggest firm.
Okay.
And so if I could go circle back around, so to be the biggest firm, and I wanted to be there fast, right? I have no patience. So how do I get there fast? Well, I could take on one of these big hitters that has all this money, and we could just go into overdrive and get there faster.
Okay, but I have a question. Do you think that if you hadn't done that, you would have made more in the aggregate?
Yes.
Okay.
100% now. So now, but it's not so much the partnership. Going backwards, my goal of why I partnered has changed, not wanting to take on a partner. So I'd take on 10 partners. I'm somebody where, for me, it's always been this way. You know, I didn't grow up poor.
You didn't?
I didn't grow up poor. I wish I did.
You were rich?
Not rich. I mean, we were okay.
Did you go to private school?
I did go to private school. I've never been to a public school in my life.
That's rich.
Even from nursery school. So my whole life, I went to private school. I went to boarding school for high school.
Boarding school? Like you lived?
I lived away from home.
Why? Were you a troublemaker?
No, but that's just the lifestyle I lived. And I graduated law school with no debt. So my parents, I got no scholarships. So, but I didn't consider myself rich. I had a lot richer friends. But
so it's all
money has never been the driving factor for me. And I think for too many people, money is the driving factor. If I do, I don't know about it.
Really?
I haven't seen any money.
Have you asked your parents?
I don't ask them that.
Why?
Because I don't want to know.
Why don't you want to know?
Because it's not something I would ever bank on, and I'll probably be too. I hope I'm too old to ever enjoy that money.
That's a good way of looking at it.
So,
actually.
like, you know, a lot of times you see the money go from like parents to the grandkids and skips a generation if they don't need it.
Then it should be like that. But you don't think in a way it's like, I think that money becomes such a taboo subject. And I wonder if it's better to always involve the children and teach them about money via, like, I don't know where I heard this. I think maybe it was Reddit that I read something where somebody that had inherited a lot of money said what was really stressful about it is that my parents said, this is like your ancestors' legacy. This is not your money, and it is for you to protect it.
See, I would just give it.
What do you mean?
I mean, if I was to give the money to my children,
but we're talking
I'm
about
not asking them to protect it.
But this was like generational wealth, where like your money should make you money type of scenario.
So I used to find myself apologizing for not growing up poor, right? And what I mean by that is like, oh, well, you didn't have to struggle. You didn't have to take out debt. You didn't have to get scholarships. Well, what do you want me to do? Apologize for that? Right? That was my natural, like you're taking that out on me. I do think, as I've studied not just this industry, but like business in a whole, there is something to be said for, if you look at a lot of successful people, they all came from struggle.
Oh, 1,000%.
They all come from struggle. So I don't know the science behind it, but there's something there, because when you look at a lot of successful people, they've come from real struggle. And for me,
So I
Maybe
think,
that's
hold
what
on.
separated me. I don't do this I promise you, and you can laugh at me. I like designer shit. I like to travel nice. I don't do it for the money. Now, maybe I would say that differently if I had no money, but I don't do it for the money. Like,
But see, hold on. I think that's like a mindset issue where you don't do it for the money because you assume the money will always be there because the money's always been there.
Probably.
So it's like you do it for the money, but you do it without a level of stress that most people that did struggle, me included, because I grew up poor at some point, immigrant, illegal
Nobody would
immigrant.
know that.
Huh?
I said nobody would know that.
What do you mean?
You live a very nice lifestyle.
But I've built it. Like, literally.
Do you worry about losing it? Do you wake up and say, how do I know I'm going to, so every Monday I wake up and say, how do I know? So we were doing 20 cases a month. Now we do, 20 cases a week. Now I do 70 cases a week, about 300 cases a month. But I wake up every Monday morning. God is my witness. I wake up every Monday morning. I'm like, holy shit. What if that person doesn't refer me cases today? What if Morgan & Morgan says, fuck Larry, we're cutting him off today? What if all my sources just dried up day one?
I don't know that
It's not guaranteed.
I know. So this is going to sound super weird, but I remember being 18 and having my first job and doing well and thinking, like, I think I was supposed to be born rich. Like, thinking, like, this doesn't, like, jive. Now, I did grow up around, like, my mom's side of the family. My dad wasn't in the picture. My mom's side of the family was well educated and they were, like, upper middle class in Mexico. But my uncles, all three of them are entrepreneurs.
Okay.
And all three of them did really well for themselves. Some lost it, some didn't. But, you know, one of my aunts, like, didn't go to college, but she worked and did pretty well for a female in Mexico at the time with no college degree, right? So I feel like my mom went to law school, though she never practiced. My real dad went to law school too, although he practiced for very little. And again, he wasn't in my life. So I feel like I always saw the possibilities. There was just a period in time when we immigrated here where we didn't have money and my uncles were the ones helping, right? And then we got out of that situation and my stepdad started to do better. And then we were like middle class, right? Like we went to public schools, but we lived in a good neighborhood. And
Schooling's a choice, by the way. Let me tell you something.
Wait, what's a choice?
Just to go backwards on your whole private school thing to me, I know families that had 100 times the amount of money that my parents had, and they chose to send their kids to public school. It's an interesting thing.
We are debating what to do because right now, anyways, we'll circle back to this, but to like finish that whole thought process, I think for me personally, I always saw that money could be made. So like my mindset was always like, oh, you can just make money, right? So I don't have like a negative association with money. I feel like there's a lot of abundance there, and I feel like I could always go make more.
I feel the same way. I'll tell you a funny story, but this is very true. So literally, as we sit here today, if I were to lose everything, and I think about this daily, there's 100 people downstairs, 25 people that would give me a job tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I bank on that on a daily basis. There's 25 people. They happen to be here because we're at this conference. But in general, I know there's a handful of people that on any given day, if I lost everything, I'll give Matt Dolman. Matt Dolman would give me a job tomorrow. Would I make the same amount of money as I make now? No. But would I make a substantial amount of money? Like, it's not like I'm going to be his errand boy. I will have a job. I could come work for you in sales if I had to.
You would
and you would at least give me
it.
a crack. I'm saying, I always know that, like, there's always going to be, so I'm with you on that one.
I feel the same way.
You're going to go out, like I said, if LawRank ended, you would have opportunities based on people you know and your work ethic and all that. And so I always know.
We're never going to start.
I'm not going to be left alone.
And you have a trust coming.
To fail. And I have a trust coming.
Yeah. I'm going to call your parents and ask them about it.
We could get them on here. They would tell you the real story about me.
I would love that.
But
let's call them.
I feel like Maria and I should hang out more often. No. This feels very natural.
But this is how everyone feels when they sit down to talk.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm always looking to be the special one.
Yeah.
So I'm not special. This is just natural.
No.
Normal.
Back to this. So what has changed in the past 10 years? Because I feel like, I don't know if maybe like you're having a bit of a midlife crisis or something akin. But what has what has changed? Also, you don't react to my jabs, which is like very annoying.
Because what I go through on a daily basis, if that's a jab, I could take that easily.
Yeah, you're no
You're
fun.
so easy.
So, what has changed?
So I think I matured for sure.
Slowly but surely?
Slowly but surely, I matured. And sometimes I don't even realize it until you take a step back. So like for me, I used to go to a lot of conferences. I haven't been to a conference in a couple of years.
No, you even look different. You look older.
I got in late last night, and just being here 2 hours this morning, I've already seen a difference in the way I'm watching people and the way I'm interacting and the way I'm viewing everything. So what's really changed is that, again, young, arrogant, cocky Larry wanted to have the biggest law firm in America for no reason other than having the biggest law firm. But that now I would tell you, we'll break that down. What exactly does that mean, having the biggest law firm? So I've got more clients. That equals a huge headache on a daily basis. I got more employees. That equals a huge headache on a daily basis. Every problem you have is just multiplied on such a level when you get to be this size. And then the other major, so one, you're inviting a plethora of issues that you don't have control over. Number two, bigger doesn't necessarily mean more profits, right? So you and I both probably have some lawyer friends that nobody's ever heard of that have 10 cases to their name today. They're all going to settle for 40 to 50 million bucks. And these guys are making way more money than every one of these jackasses that you see all over TV. And nobody's ever heard of them. So
yes, but those
do they have a big firm? No. Are they making a lot of money? Are they more profitable? So what's my,
But those are outliers, though. Like,
are they?
Yes, I do think that those are outliers.
So how do you think you become successful? How do you become successful in this business? If success was defined by money, what's the path to making the most money in this business? High volume in marketing or Bob Simon and getting $40 million verdicts?
I think
can't do both. People have tried it.
Brian Panish does a great job.
Brian Panish is a trial lawyer.
Yes, but he also gets
he lets them use his name. He's not.
I'm just saying.
But Brian Panish.
Morgan, they try and house.
Morgan & Morgan is the one outlier. Like I said, people are going to be offended. Alex Shunnarah, Glenn Lerner, Mike Morris. Again, compliments to all three of you, because I'm putting you in that same group of like top 5 firms in America, and I'm sure I'm missing some others, but they're not Morgan & Morgan. They're not. Morgan is so far ahead of the rest.
Okay, but who do you think
in terms
makes
of
more?
size.
Glenn Lerner, Mike Morris, Shunnarah, or
Bob Simon, or Mike Rose.
Definitely, I think the big volume firms.
No. Take home themselves?
Yes.
No.
How much do you think, let's not name names, the top trial lawyers take home?
The top? 15 to 20 million a year.
How much do you think the top?
10 to 12. So let me tell you how this all came out. So Celino and Barnes, you remember Celino and Barnes?
Yes, of course.
So when their case went public, for the last 4 years prior to Celino and Barnes breaking up, Ross Celino personally and Barnes personally, which is really impressive because there's 2 of them, which means they doubled. They were each making $12 million a year.
Every year.
Every year,
just
for 4 years.
Every year for 4 years.
For the prior 4 years before they break up, which means the partners made $24 million after all the costs.
I do think that obviously the Dordicks, the Brian Panishes,
again,
do make more. Okay, I agree with you.
I think they make more now.
I think 12 seems low in my opinion for a big advertiser partnership. 24 seems low to me.
Not 24 million in profit, 24 million that's left for them to take home after paying everything.
So let's say they paid, what do you think the profit would be?
So like, just think about it. So how much does Mike Morris do in total settlements every year? I think he says about 150 million. No, more. I think. What's his total fees a year? 75 million, 80 million?
I forget, something like that.
So let's just say he's doing 80 million in fees. What's left for him after paying everybody and everything?
I would think 40.
50%? So I think if you're doing 25% margins, you're good. 50% would be amazing. You think he's making 40 million a year?
I'll ask him.
I think he's making 12 million a year.
I think he'll tell me.
Which is fantastic. I think he makes 12.
But you might already know.
I don't know.
Okay.
I've always gone off of
But see,
I've always gone off of Celino and Barnes.
But Celino Barnes, were they top 5?
Oh, yeah.
You don't think Glenn's making more?
I think Glenn, you want my guess on Glenn?
Yeah.
12 million.
That's crazy. I definitely think
that's what I think.
Trial firms can make more.
Because there's so much
top
overhead.
5. Okay. But here's where I think it's...
Now, again, we're talking about the tops of the tops, right?
I know.
Most law firms owners aren't making $1 million a year.
No, I know.
And most trial lawyers aren't making $1 million.
I know. I'm aware. I mean, I've spoken to thousands of law firms and I qualify them on every call. So I know what people make.
If you make $1 million a year as a lawyer, you're probably top 5% nationally.
Okay, but hold on. We're taking and saying, let's put the top 5 trial, top 5 volume, right?
Yeah, top 5 trial wins every time, in my book.
Yes, I think you're right. I actually do think you're right. Now, I think that it's probably harder to be a top 5 trial lawyer than to be a top 5 volume firm.
100%, because you have to be a top 5 trial lawyer. You have to get people to send you their best cases.
Well, and it's really about
their best cases.
And it's really about just you. Whereas you could build, especially now
what is it? Nick Rowley just sold a house for $30 million.
Yeah, I mean, he would be top 5.
Glenn Lerner sold a house for $8 million. I'm not trying to be funny, but one house was $30 million, one house was $8 million.
Well, here's the thing, right?
He's gonna hate me after this.
No one's gonna hate you.
That's my guy.
So here's
big in Arizona, by the way. Lerner and Rowe, big, huge.
Yes, Vegas too.
But Arizona, big.
So here's the thing, though. I think that a lot of business people, especially now with the ability to own a law firm, can come and run a law firm better than most lawyers are running them because they see it like a business. They will treat it like a business. So I think it's easier in a way to run a top 5 volume, to break into that than to break into the top 5 trial.
Easier if you put the right people, so everything can be
But that's
easy.
what I mean, because you can literally say, I need a team, 7 leadership to do this. Whereas in trial, it's just dependent on you.
So I would say most firms do it wrong. I'm still battling it at the age of 40. I've had my own firm for 9 years now.
How many active cases do you have?
3,700.
That's ridiculous, though. Ridiculous. Like, that is really good.
Is that a lot?
Yes, that's really good.
So here's the biggest issue that I've always had in my career, and I would beg young lawyers not to do it. So I've talked about this with even my own mom, which means it's something very personal. So from a very young age as a lawyer, I put myself in the room. Like my first friends in this industry, I'm not kidding, okay? Glenn Lerner, 10 million plus a year when I met him. Alex Shunnarah, 10 million plus a year when I met him. I consider Dan Morgan and John Morgan friends. You know that.
Mm-hmm.
Not even going to guess on what they make a year, okay? Shunnarah, Mike Morris, good friend. Tell me. So my experience, like when I would come home from a conference, I wasn't hanging out with average Joes. I'm like, wow, I'm making $1 million a year and everybody else is making 10 million. I suck.
Yep.
That's how I came home.
But you know why you felt comfortable as a young lawyer, like hanging out with quote unquote the big boys, right?
I can tell you why.
Why?
Because I'm cooler than them.
No.
Just because they got more money doesn't
change. That's
that.
not why.
That's the fact.
No, I think it's because your whole life you grew up in a privileged environment. So this type
Tell me how you really feel, Maria.
No.
The fact is, people want to fucking hang out with greatness, and I'm great. That's the truth. Even if I don't have the same money they have.
You're great, and you're fun, and you're a character, and all that, right? Which I think people gravitate towards you because you have good energy. But most people would be super intimidated to hang out with the top volume firms in the country.
That's an interesting look at it.
I think,
but I can tell you, it definitely,
it
definitely ruined me. It definitely ruined me.
But in a good way.
My competition is like, no matter what I do, and I still feel this way to this day, I don't mind admitting this. No matter what I do, until I reach levels above that, nothing will ever be good enough. So if I make $5 million a year, it's not good enough. And that won't be good enough.
Even that won't be good enough.
I'm always out chasing. I want to be the best. But let me finish with this. When I had my own firm, and it has nothing to do with not having a partner, when we were a smaller firm, every client of mine was happy. Every client of mine had a call back from me on the same day if they called me. Clients would call me 5 times a day, and I'd call them back every single time. Now, as I went to these conferences, people said, hey, you got to work on the business, not in the business. You got to work on the business, not in the business. So I stopped taking those calls a little bit. I still take them. How I built my career was really being the lawyer to my clients, and they had access to me, and I would take every single call. They would never bother me. You can't scale that.
No, you can't.
You can't. It's humanly impossible. Just
it's
like
literally
the biggest
impossible.
issue I see with firms is intake. So I used to do my own intake. Okay? Whether it's Bob Simon, Mike Morris, me, Shunnarah, Lerner, whoever you want to mention, every single one of us would do a better intake than anybody we could hire to do an intake. But you can't do every intake when you do volume. So there's no way to scale. So
No, I get
scaling to me it's the hardest thing to do, and you can't give the same, like I want every person that works for me to give that same service. It can't be done. So if I could do it all over again, I would try to do something where I didn't have to rely on everybody else. Where if people are hiring me, I still get it today. I'm sure, listen, I'm sure John Morgan gets it. Like people think they're hiring me and I'm not going to touch their case.
Right.
And if you don't just care about the money, that's a hard pill to swallow, because I have clients that will never come back to me because they think I fucked them and I did a bad job. But all I really did was give their case to one of my employees. That's it.
No,
and I didn't take every one of their calls. It's horrible. I'm a people pleaser. I want to keep everybody happy. It's impossible. But there's no right way. There's no right way or wrong way to do this business. I've seen it done a million ways. Some people have made money. Some people haven't, no matter how you do it. There's no right or wrong way.
Now, I just want to close with this because I think this is really important. They say that you are the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most. And I think that what you did in exposing yourself and being comfortable, like you felt like you deserved a seat at the table, even though in theory, like on paper, maybe you didn't yet, but you knew you would, right? And I think this is a really important lesson because lawyers are so intimidated by the people that are successful, and they don't understand that they will influence you. It will change you.
Correct. Well, nobody wants to admit it, but we all have huge egos and we're all super competitive. That's the most successful lawyers, whether they're the trial lawyers or the big firms.
It's a different type of ego, in my opinion.
But it's
an ego.
There's ego. Have you ever heard Cy Wakeman speak?
No. Oh, yes, I think I have.
She wrote a book called No Ego. In 5 years ago, I didn't get it. Like, I can take any situation in life and I could argue, doesn't mean I'm going to be right, but I could argue that I could make it all about ego. We all have egos, and it's a driving force in us.
It is.
But I wish there was a way where you could make money in the legal industry and not pry on the clients. Because again, I'll be the first one to come out and say, like you said, I'm doing it because I have to compete. But winning a client by a ridiculous social, like let me ask you this. Why do you do all your social media? I think you're in a different industry, but you're doing it for fun. What do you do social media for? For fun or for business?
Both. But I think the only way that you can gain any business from social media is to be authentic. And I fucking hate the word, but it's the truth. To be yourself. I don't know how to be anything other than myself. Some people don't like that. I'm okay with that.
You grew up poor.
Maybe. Okay. Maybe not.
Yeah.
It's going
to be my new nickname for her, Poor Maria.
But I never...
Changing her in my phone.
But you know what's crazy? I never felt poor. I saw it. I could...
You didn't really understand it.
I knew it, but I was surrounded by so much... Like my uncles were doing really well. My grandparents had always done well. We never couldn't afford a pair of shoes or food on the table, right? And it was so short-lived that I actually think it just wired things are temporary and you can always like make. I don't have like a negative association, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think my husband grew up poorer.
Really?
And he did, yeah. And I think he has more of like, he's more afraid to lose it.
When I grew up, and we were talking about this earlier, and I never really thought about this, and you said if I went to prep school, I must have grown up rich. The funny thing is, it's not really funny, but no matter how wealthy my parents were, like there were always so many people richer.
I think
It's
that's
crazy.
I think
'Cause
that's
now
really tough.
You just talked about that, like in the legal industry. Like no matter how well I do and how well, like people think my law firm's successful, and we're successful. I don't think my law firm's successful because I'm not judging myself against the 90 other thousand million. I'm judging myself against the 1%ers.
But that's what I'm saying, because that's how you grew up. It's what feels safe and comfortable to you.
I feel like a failure every day. I'm like, how is this loser making more business than me? Because it just doesn't make sense.
But it's literally, if you think about it, it's exactly how you grew up. And
so I haven't really changed at all.
No. And I've heard, well, I'm sure you have, but I've heard that can be really tough for kids. Kids that grew up like their parents did well enough to put them in these environments, but then they had like friends with private jets
Yep,
and,
I'm with you. Yep.
Access to all this stuff.
Mm.
And they always have like people that I've met, maybe not everyone, but they have a chip on their shoulders because they're like, I was privileged enough to go to these places, but I felt poor.
Correct. My whole life, I felt like the poor kid. That's because I was the poorest person in the room of rich people, not the richest person in the room of poor people. And in this industry right now, I was just downstairs at the conference. I don't know, 90% of the people down there, but I felt like the poorest person of my group of friends.
Mm.
And I don't even know everybody else, but I'm sure I'm doing better than all of them. And they're probably like, oh, who's this Larry guy? I just saw, I'm not kidding, I won't mention the kid's name. It's actually from Boston. I just saw somebody take a fanboy picture with Mike Morse. Now, I love Mike Morse, he's a friend, but like, it's funny, like in our, I don't see it that way, but like to some people, the Shunnarahs and the Learners and the Morses and the Morgans are like gods to them. And I'm like, they're just a personal injury lawyer that marketed at the right time. I also will say this. I'm going to leave on this.
No, I want to ask you about social media.
Okay, but I have this point to make. 10 years ago, 2024, 10 years ago, some of these guys blew up in their small markets. Okay, Alex dominated Alabama.
Yep.
Mike Morse dominated Detroit.
Yep.
Daryl Isaacs dominated Kentucky.
Yep.
That's not happening in 2024 anymore. Okay.
Yep.
There's more competition. Even they would all tell you. Okay. Like if Alex was getting 3 cases out of every 10 in Alabama, he's now getting 2, which is still dominant.
Right.
But it's
there was a timing. Totally. There's always a timing.
That period. If you look, I studied a little bit. The Daryl Isaacs, the Mike Morse. I'm using Daryl Isaacs, Mike Morse, and Alex Shunnarah in this because they all come from 3 interesting markets. Yep. They hit it at the right time.
They did.
If you became the massive billboard guy in Detroit in 2012 or in Alabama, I mean, billboards in Alabama were like $500 a pop.
But you know
in
what's
Boston,
the equivalent?
They're $50,000 a pop.
You know what's the equivalent now? The lawyers that are like, they're so unique for a lawyer, top dog, right? That are advertising a certain way, that are putting themselves out there. That's the right time to do it now.
So I think he's changed the industry.
Totally. 1,000%.
Top dog himself, I know James pretty well. He's changed the industry. But there's goods and bads about that as well, right?
Yes, but hold on. I don't want this podcast to end without asking you, why did you stop posting on social? Because you were pretty active. You were pretty entertaining. You very, very active. And like, you just, I haven't seen you in a while.
I was the kid that, like, when I was in college, I never had Facebook. I never wanted any. I still struggle with the idea of like when somebody posts that, hey, I'm at Disney World with my family, or I'm at this restaurant with these groups, or Gary Sarner took some people out to dinner last night and it's all over social media. I never wanted anybody to know where I am. Like, for instance, I'm in Arizona right now. I didn't tell anybody besides a handful of people that I was coming here. Like, it's none of their business. As far as my office is concerned, I'm in Boston working right now. As far as everybody's concerned, I'm in Nobody knows what I'm doing in my life, nor do I want them to. So I always fought social media. I don't happen to love social media. And then I would just kind of fuck around on Instagram, and people liked my stuff, I think, because I was just kind of being real.
Exactly.
But I couldn't be as real as I wanted to be, because if I was the real me, I would have a ton of enemies. Like every lawyer in this building would hate me because I would just call them out for the real shit that they are. So that doesn't work either. So why am I off social media right now? Because I want to do a rebrand, and I haven't figured out my rebrand. So for me, I decided that I'm just going to completely shut it down until I figure out how I want to relaunch myself. So I'm going to do a relaunch. I have no idea what it's going to look like. It's definitely going to be authentic. What I'd like to do is really let people in on my life.
You could be like on like,
but that comes with
like a reality show.
I know, but that comes with like I said, it comes with a lot. Like, do I really want everybody to know? Like, again, I give Jen Gore credit. Like, do I really want everybody to know everything that's going on in my life? And the answer is no. But I never did it for business. And I truthfully believe if somebody did something great, so nobody puts a lot of time into social media that's not doing it for business because they look at it as a waste of time. But if somebody genuinely, if I took a year sabbatical from the law firm and just documented my whole life, I would gain more business from showing that than I could trying to just gain business from it on its own. Point is, I'm coming back on social media. I'm going to come back bigger and stronger than ever. I just don't know what I'm going to do.
I'm going to cancel you.
I think the problem is I'm a perfectionist. So I'd rather, and Gary Vee, who I study, would tell you the opposite. I'd rather not put anything out and wait till I really know what I want to put out, where he would tell you just put shit out every fucking day.
I don't agree.
He would tell you to just push it out right now. I should take a picture of you right now and say, hey, I'm on the fucking podcast with LawRank, tip the scales.
I agree. So here's the thing. I've learned this the hard way in the past few years, that perfection really is the enemy of good. And like, you just end up doing nothing. Like, you're doing nothing because you want it to be perfect. Thank you so much to Larry for everything he shared with us today. If you found the story valuable, please share it with someone you want to see succeed. Subscribe so you never miss an episode, and leave a 5-star review. It goes a long way to help others discover the show.